Is the 3950X any good for gaming? We're gonna find out. Hey guys, welcome to Frame Chasers, and today we got some benchmarks for you. I recently delidded my 3950X in a previous video, and with that we saw some pretty significant temperature differences. But did they translate to gaming at all? So I overclocked the 3950X quite significantly, and it took me a long time to get it stable. It wasn't nearly as straightforward as the 3300X where I just punch in the numbers and it goes kind of thing. Just for example, the SoC voltage didn't like going too high. There was like a sweet spot for it. Eventually, I finally got it to the same 3733 C14 with an 1866 fabric clock. And I also tried 4.4 gigahertz all-core, and I tried Auto OC in Ryzen Master with plus 200 on the boost clock. So the first thing you're going to see here, I'm going to put it up on the screen. You're going to see that the 4.4 gigahertz all-core and the Auto OC in Ryzen Master produced like the exact same results in gaming. Like 100, like within margin of error, like within 1 FPS of each other. And it took me 1.46 volts to get 4.4 gigahertz on all cores. So like, what does this tell us? Obviously, it means the Ryzen 3000 architecture is 100% limited by the CCX design and the fabric clock. Even if I were to push those all cores to 5 gigahertz, you wouldn't see a 1% improvement in gaming. That's just not the way the architecture works at all. Now, if I could get that fabric clock to 4 gigahertz, you'd see some difference there. So just to get it out of the way, if you are buying a 3900X or a 3950X, don't bother doing an all-core overclock if you're just gaming. Do the Auto OC and Ryzen Master and just save your chip the load of having that much voltage. Alright, the next thing I'm going to post up here, just for argument's sake, I'm going to be using the Auto OC ones, and we're going to be comparing these numbers versus the CPU numbers that I had before with the 10900K and the other ones. I'm also going to post up this IDA64 memory benchmark just so you kind of have an idea of where it sits versus the other chips before we get into the benchmarks. But here it is. You can see 62 nanoseconds, which is the lowest that I could get it. And I spent a lot of time trying to get that number down, but I just couldn't do it. But it's pretty close to all the other kind of Ryzen ones that you're going to get at a max overclock. So let's get into the benchmarks here and see where this lands. Alright guys, so there you have it. It does well, but it's not any better than a 3700X or a 3300X, to be honest. Like, it's just not the way the Ryzen architecture works. The core count increase doesn't scale just because every 4 cores that you add is another CCX that the game has to manage, right? That's why the 3300X is such a good gaming chip. It only has 4 cores and an IO die, and there's no other BS in between there. In terms of the actual delid that I did in itself, it didn't matter at all. It didn't do anything. If anything, maybe I could have gotten to 3800 fabric and not 3733 because of that one capacitor that I lost, but I'm not too sure about that. But in terms of a delid, it did absolutely nothing performance-wise. But, I mean, it ran cool as hell. Like, it didn't go above 60 degrees in any gaming benchmarks. So don't bother delidding these things. Complete waste of time. It doesn't increase your boost frequency. It doesn't do anything, really. It literally just does nothing. All the performance increase in a Ryzen chip comes from that fabric clock, which has no bearing on the dies itself. It's just the interconnect between them, right? And there's literally nothing you can do to improve that. It's all lottery in that scenario. So just buy a chip and just see if you can get that fabric clock as high as you can. Would I buy it for gaming? No. A 6-core Intel chip, like a 8700K or a 10600K, is still... It would blow the doors off this thing, 100%. Would I buy it for a rendering? It definitely renders way faster. I can stream at x264 slow now, which I couldn't do with the 9900K before, so that's like a huge bonus. Yeah, it's a rendering monster. That's all that's all you should be using it for. You should not get this thing for gaming. It's too slow. I also noticed that, like, even just opening Chrome tabs and like if I'm editing something in Adobe Premiere or opening Photoshop, even just like opening the window, it's like a couple of milliseconds slower than an Intel system. Like the overall system is not as snappy. It's like it's almost like it's always waiting to choose which core to use. Like I don't know how to describe it until you actually use both the systems. The AMD system is just like laggy, and you wouldn't ever notice that unless you've actually come from a 9900K or a 10900K system. You know what I mean? It's really hard to describe it. When I first started doing my my video rendering with 3950X, I was like, why the hell does this thing feel so slow? And then once I actually finished my editing and exported the video, obviously it's more than twice as fast. So I'm like, it feels slower, but it renders faster. And so even when I'm streaming my game, as long as I don't look at it or touch it, it's definitely faster at the workload. It's like hard to describe. The best way to describe it is like a 1940s like Russian tank that has like 2,000 horsepower, and it has such a slow acceleration but really fast top speed. So it can't like 0 to 60 in 1 second. It takes like 20 seconds, but it'll go like 0 to 300. You know what I mean? That's the best way. Whereas an Intel system doesn't have a really high top speed, but man, it's like an aerial atom where it's a go-kart where it's doing this as snappy as possible, right? It can do like corners and acceleration and like road coursing at like incredible speeds. That's why they both feel so different in different scenarios. But yeah, if you were thinking of a Ryzen system for gaming right now in August of 2020, 3300X is the only one that I would buy if you're like an esports gamer. Anything with 6 cores or more, I would suggest an Intel system right now. It's just not laggy. It doesn't have those CCX problems. Wait for Ryzen 4000 and see if they can increase that fabric clock at all, and see if that 8-core CCX will be the winning factor in them getting the gaming crown. On that note too, even with the Ryzen 4000 series, I wouldn't get a 4900X because then you would actually have 2 6-core CCDs. which would probably game worse than just like a 4700X with one 8-core. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird. It would be sick if they did like a 4900 XT with like an 8-core and a 4-core. That would be like the gaming king, I think. Like 8 cores for gaming, 4 cores for the rest of the crap, right? That'd be the gaming champ. But if they do 6 and 6, that's going to be junk. But yeah, anyway, that was my little rant on this whole thing. I do have other issues with the Ryzen build in itself. Like, I'm not sure if it's just the X570 Taichi motherboard, but like that chipset gets so damn hot with like a long session of stress testing. If I'm streaming for like 2 hours plus, my capture card will actually start flickering because the heat from the chipset, it gets to like 75°C, and it actually starts baking my my RAM slots, and it bakes my capture card. I actually had to do a PCI Express riser cable to get the capture card away from the motherboard so it doesn't bake it. It's such a shit show. I like in that regard in itself, I would recommend B550 right now just because the X570 chipset temperatures are unacceptable. Had I have known that, I would have bought an X570. It also might just be a X570 Taichi problem, but man, those things get way too damn hot. I actually have a this is kind of a rant, but I actually have a little like chipset motherboard water block, and I'm gonna throw it on there maybe for another. I'll do it for another video. But yeah, beware of X570 for that reason, for prolonged usage periods. So also a few people were asking me if I wanted to do a direct die on the 3950X. Having seen the performance of the Delidded and liquid metal not doing anything at all, I'm not gonna bother doing a direct die. I wouldn't even risk the chips for a possible 0%. Even if it had like a 1 or 2% gain, I would probably do it. But like, it absolutely does nothing for your performance. That's just not the way the architecture works. So I'm not even gonna bother with it. But if I get enough subscriptions, I might. Anyway, guys, that's it for this one. Don't even bother with Ryzen right now if you're a pure gamer. Maybe if you're using it for work, sure. But yeah, if you liked the video, like, share, subscribe, do all that SEO stuff for me. I had a lot of fun with this one. It was a good project, and I will be using this for future benchmarks for sure, and definitely upgrading the 4950X when I get it. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this one, guys. Thanks for joining me, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Hope you learned something today, and chase those frames. Talk to you later.